Hey guys, it's midnight. You're cold. The walls of your cell are stone, and you haven't eaten in days. You were once a servant. Now you're something worse, forgotten. Welcome to Sleep Scrolls. You're lying in a bunk the width of your shoulders, sharing the air with 5 strangers and the scent of someone else's shoes. It's the 4th night aboard the Titanic, and while this ship is a marvel of engineering and ego, your corner of it looks more like the underbelly of a train station. The metal walls sweat with condensation. The mattress under you, stuffed with horsehair and regret, creaks every time someone rolls over. You can hear the ship groaning softly in its bones, a low metallic murmur that feels almost hungry. You're in steerage, 3rd class, the place where dreams supposedly begin, but only after you've elbowed your way through a few layers of coal dust. Officially, the Titanic was designed to give even steerage passengers comfort and dignity. Unofficially, you're not sure what part of this qualifies as either. Someone coughs, a deep, wet cough that echoes off the rivets. No one moves. Everyone's already learned that movement wastes warmth. You pull your wool blanket tighter, but it's no match for the chill sneaking in through the steel floor. Maybe it's just the ocean underneath. Or maybe it's the fact that you're starting to realize you're not just on the Titanic, you're beneath it. Upstairs, far, far upstairs, there are domed glass ceilings, potted palms, and carpets thick enough to lose a shoe in. Up there, people are flirting over oysters and champagne. Meanwhile, down here, you're praying the guy in the bunk above you didn't bring lice on board. It wasn't supposed to be like this. The posters said majestic voyage to America, not unpaid internship in a floating dungeon. You were told the ship was unsinkable. You were told everyone would be treated well. You weren't told about the shared toilet with a door that doesn't lock, or the fact that every step above you is muffled, like you're beneath a world you'll never touch. And speaking of steps, when you arrived, they marched you through a maze of corridors like livestock. A crewman checked your papers, nodded without looking at your face, and pointed you to this room. You don't even know where the deck is. You haven't seen the stars in days. Oh, but the brochure had stars, and a promenade, and piano music. Instead, your lullaby tonight is the rhythmic slam of water pipes, someone whispering prayers in Gaelic, and the endless, patient thrum of the engines. You try to imagine you're back home, lying in your own bed. But your own bed didn't vibrate like a drumskin stretched over death. They say over 700 third-class passengers boarded the Titanic. They don't say how many ever felt like guests. And here's the funny part. Titanic's third-class accommodations were actually better than most ships of the time. You have electric light, a sink, and walls between you and the next family over. Luxury, right? But it's still a far cry from the fantasy. Some steerage passengers joke it's like staying in a prison with better food. Others joke you probably won't survive this. You laugh, quietly, because it's the kind of laugh that makes you feel a little warmer. And because if you don't laugh, you'll start remembering that this ship doesn't have nearly enough lifeboats, especially for people who sleep near the propellers. Above you, someone groans. A bad dream. Or maybe they rolled too far and hit the steel hull. Either way, no one asks. You all lie still, listening to the language of creaks and cold, trying not to breathe too loud. Historians still argue whether the Titanic's class system actively endangered those in steerage. Some say there were locked gates. Others say there were just procedures. Either way, the result was the same. When the iceberg came, the decks weren't just divided by wood and railing, but by time. Down here, you're last in line. Always. You don't know that yet, but something in your chest feels it. That uneasy thump beneath your ribs, that twitch when the ship shifts too suddenly. And yet, you still have hope. You packed it right alongside your boots and that tiny tin cup from home. You carried it across Ireland or Norway or Syria. And now it lies next to you, between cold steel and colder truth. This is your fresh start, if you make it. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. A drop of condensation lands on your cheek. You blink. It feels like a tear, but not yours. You wake up to the sound of metal. Not a bang, not a crash, just the mechanical groan of a ship stretching itself awake. The Titanic doesn't hum. She sighs. And as the sighing echoes through the walls, you blink the cold out of your eyes and notice something else. The smell of porridge. You hoped for something better, but breakfast in steerage isn't meant to impress. It's meant to sustain just enough to keep you upright, not enough to make you full. You swing your legs over the bunk and land on the floor with a slap. Your feet meet steel again, colder than you remembered. You wince, rub your eyes, and pull on your second best socks. Your first best pair didn't survive yesterday. You shuffle down the narrow corridor with others, blinking through the flickering electric bulbs overhead. You all look the same, hair wild from restless sleep, faces still pressed with pillow creases, and that dazed, slightly hopeful expression of people who still believe this ship is going to save them. The dining area for third class is a large, shared space with wooden benches, long tables, and the comforting sameness of slop trays lined in rows. You find your spot. A crew member ladles out the morning's fare, porridge, thick and gray like it lost a bet, and something pale that could be called bread if you're feeling generous. You eat without complaining. You've eaten worse. Back home, this would be a celebration. Here, though, it just feels like survival with better lighting. As you chew, your eyes drift upward. You know what's happening above you. At this very moment, in first class, waiters in white gloves are serving smoked salmon, soft-boiled eggs in silver cups, grilled kidneys on toast, and perhaps the occasional orange brought in from Spain. There's no rush. The first-class dining saloon has windows that glitter. The menus have French. Up there, the napkins are starched into swans. Down here, yours feels like it was once a curtain. And yet, the strangest thing, you're not angry. You're used to it. There's a kind of peace in knowing where you stand. You eat your porridge like a soldier, back straight, spoon firm. You glance at the person across from you, and they offer a faint smile. Not joy, just camaraderie. You're all in this together, and that matters. Still, you wonder what it would be like, just once, to walk up those stairs, past the steel gates, past the watchful crew, and into the world where breakfast is soft and people don't eat with their elbows touching. But don't get ideas. They're watching. One woman tried last night. She wandered up a little too far and was turned back by an officer who didn't raise his voice, but didn't need to. His eyes said everything. You don't belong here. Go back where you came from. You spoon another bite. It tastes like boiled wallpaper paste, but it's warm. And that warmth is the closest thing to luxury you'll get today. Historians still debate how much freedom third-class passengers really had on the Titanic. Some say the gates were locked to prevent disease spreading to the upper classes. Others argue it was less about germs and more about status. After all, steerage passengers were legally required to pass health inspections before docking in America. You were a number, a risk, a line on someone's clipboard. You get up from breakfast and follow the others out. The hallway smells faintly of mildew. One of the younger kids is crying. His mother whispers something in Swedish and lifts him onto her hip. Her shawl is thin. The baby's feet are bare. You wonder how long that kid will remember this trip. Maybe he'll survive. Maybe he'll tell his grandchildren one day that he was on the Titanic and that his mother held him close while porridge boiled nearby and the walls hummed like a distant animal. Or maybe no, one will remember him at all. That's the strange thing about being third class. You know your name may never appear in the books. Your face may never be drawn, never be printed, never make the paper. Even now, as you walk back toward your bunk, the engines beneath you roar louder than any prayer, louder than your entire existence. You pause near a crew station. 2 stewards are murmuring. One chuckles, the other looks over his shoulder. You can't catch much, but one word sticks: iceberg. You file that away. Strange thing to hear, especially when you're in the middle of the Atlantic. But then again, this is April. The sea can surprise you. The rest of the morning passes slowly. You wander a bit. Third-class passengers were allowed to go topside during certain hours, though not to the fancy decks. Those were reserved for shoes with polish and suits without creases. Still, you breathe it in, the salt in the air, the vast expanse of blue and more blue, like you've fallen into a dream made entirely of sky and water. A little girl clutches the railing near you. She points and whispers, "Is that America?" "It's not, it's nothing, just more ocean." You don't correct her. Lunch comes. More stew, more hard bread, maybe a boiled potato if you're lucky. It's not bad, not great either, but you're grateful. You're warm, you're afloat, and somewhere ahead of you is a new world. At least, that's what you tell yourself. Back below deck, someone starts humming a tune. A fiddler, probably Irish, has taken out his instrument, and soon there's a ripple of rhythm through the hallway. A few people clap, someone taps their feet, and for a moment, just a moment, steerage feels less like a cage and more like a community. You almost smile, almost, because you still haven't seen the lifeboats. You don't know how many there are. You don't know where they are. You don't know if you're even allowed near them. You're not thinking of disaster. No one is. But in the back of your mind, that quiet voice speaks again. Why so few? Why so high up? Why so far from here? Still, you shrug it off. This is the most expensive, most modern ship ever built. It's practically invincible. You finish your second stale biscuit, lean back against the metal wall, and tell yourself, what could possibly go wrong? You're not part of the crew, but after a few days aboard Titanic, you start to see the ones who are the ones who never smile, never stop moving, and never seem to sleep. They pass you like ghosts, carrying buckets, trays, ropes, tools, always in a hurry, always silent. Their uniforms are clean at first glance, but if you look closely, you can see the truth in the frayed sleeves and weary shoulders. These aren't men, they're gears in the machine. You watch one now, young, maybe your age. He stumbles slightly as he rounds a corner, carrying a sack of coal over his shoulder. His cap slips forward. He adjusts it with one hand and disappears through a black iron door. You never see him again. That's how it goes on Titanic. There are whole layers of life below yours. If you're in steerage, you're already near the bottom. But even below that, the engine men, the stokers, the firemen, the coal passers, they live in a darkness so thick it stains their skin. And if anyone tells you the ship was a floating palace, remember this: palaces don't run on sweat and blistered hands. There are over 800 crew members aboard Titanic. Most aren't officers or brass-buttoned waiters gliding through the first-class saloons. Most are hidden, silent, below deck, working in shifts so punishing that they barely remember what day it is. You pass a group of them outside the boiler rooms, faces gray with coal dust, eyes rimmed with red. One looks at you. For a second, he looks like he wants to say something. Then he just exhales and keeps walking. That's the unspoken rule here. You don't speak unless spoken to. And you certainly don't complain, because no matter how hard your passage is, theirs is worse. The firemen live beside the engines. Literally, their bunks are within shouting distance of the roaring furnaces that burn night and day to keep Titanic moving. It takes over 600 tons of coal daily to power this beast. That coal has to be hauled, shoveled, and fed constantly into the boilers by hand. No machines, just men, and a lot of bruises. The air in those rooms, thick enough to chew, hot enough to bake bread, and as loud as a god pounding on a war drum. No one talks about them in the brochures. You'll never hear the White Star Line boast about the men coughing up soot in shifts of 4 hours on, 4 hours off. But there, the reason the chandeliers sparkle above the first-class dancers, the reason your porridge was warm this morning, the reason Titanic moves at all. Funny, isn't it? How everything elegant is built on something brutal. There's a steward you've come to recognize. He serves in both second and third class. Thin, with a tight haircut and a permanent squint. You catch him resting against a bulkhead, wiping his hands with a cloth that used to be white. You nod. He nods back. Then he's gone. They move fast, the servants of Titanic. Not just fast, but quietly, seamlessly, as if they're trained not to be noticed. They emerge from hidden doors, vanish into shadowy stairwells, appear beside beds before you even knew you needed a blanket. And while you sleep, they keep moving. Historians still argue whether the crew knew what kind of catastrophe they were sailing into. Some say they were overconfident, even smug. Others suggest many were just scared, trapped by their contracts, by poverty, by duty. You get the feeling that the truth lies somewhere in the middle. You walk the lower passageways that afternoon and notice something odd. A hallway that dips slightly, a strange echo when you tap your foot, the vibration of the engines stronger than before. One of the older Irishmen in your section mutters something about her getting restless. You glance at him. He taps the wall, then points upward. Too fast, he says. Too fast for these waters. And he's not wrong. Titanic is steaming across the Atlantic at a speed just shy of recklessness. Captain Edward Smith, the man in charge, is under pressure. The company wants to make headlines, not for safety, for speed. What they don't advertise is that there were already multiple iceberg warnings sent by wireless telegraph. Ships ahead had radioed their locations. Some were even forced to slow down. But Titanic, she sailed on. You shake the thought off. Surely someone in charge knows better. Surely no one would endanger a ship this massive. Still, the crew doesn't seem relaxed. You notice their hushed tones, the glances they exchange, the way some of them keep checking the time as if they're waiting for something. You head back toward your section, trying not to feel the pressure building in your chest. You pass the laundry rooms, enormous, steaming, brutal. Women work there too, dozens of them, scrubbing, pressing, folding linen for people who'll never learn their names. You watch one haul a pile of towels almost as tall as she is. Her hands are raw, her shoulders slump forward, but she sings, softly, a tune you almost recognize, something about home maybe. You keep walking, but her voice stays with you. Later that night, You lie in your bunk and think about the people who don't sleep. The man shoveling coal in a furnace that feels like hell. The maid pressing a silk dress she'll never be allowed to wear. The steward who must memorize 100 names and never forget a single shoe size. The officers who walk the decks with lanterns, checking the horizon, pretending they aren't afraid. You begin to understand something. The Titanic isn't a ship. It's a stage. And you're not even part of the cast. You're a seat filler. But down below, beneath even you, there's another world. One made of fire and muscle, of aching backs and smoke-stung eyes. A world that no one claps for. A world that only gets remembered when something goes wrong. And something is going wrong. You can feel it. In the strange way the ship lurches. In the way the crew avoids eye contact. In the way you haven't seen that young coal carrier again. You wonder how many names you'll never learn. How many stories will sink without ever being told. How many lives, like yours, will be buried beneath someone else's luxury. And still, Titanic sails forward, through dark water, past floating ice, towards something no one's ready for. You can't sleep. The bunk feels harder tonight, though it hasn't changed. The air is too still, too thick, like it's waiting. You shift under your blanket a coarse, scratchy thing that smells faintly of seawater and soap, and stare at the ceiling just a few feet above your nose. The ship creaks. Somewhere, metal flexes. Everyone else around you is breathing slow. Soft snores, rustling limbs. A baby whimpers in its mother's arms. You envy their ease, but something gnawing at you. You slip out of bed quietly, bare feet, hitting the cold steel floor with a soft clink. You pull on your coat, still damp from the misty afternoon, and step out into the narrow corridor. No one stops you. No one notices. This part of the ship, the underworld, is mostly forgotten after dark. The lamps overhead burn low to conserve electricity, casting everything in a weak, yellow haze. The walls sweat. The air smells of coal dust and boiled meat. You walk quietly, past sleeping cabins, past the laundry room where the presses lie still for once. You pass a crewman asleep on a bench. He's holding a cloth over his eyes and muttering something in his dreams. You keep walking. Eventually, you find one of the doors that leads to the upper decks. Locked, of course. A big iron gate stands between you and the stairway beyond. You knew this was here, but you'd forgotten how final it looks in the dark. Some say these gates were to protect first class from the lower classes. Others say they were there for quarantine, required by American immigration laws. Historians still argue whether they were ever meant to be locked during emergencies. You look at it now and think it looks like a cage. You turn back. The ship groans again, not sharply, but deeply, like something ancient shifting in its sleep. You pause, hand resting against the cold metal of the bulkhead, and then you feel it. A jolt, small, almost nothing, like a hiccup, like the ship tripped over its own feet. A second later, a long, low scrape. Not loud, but unmistakable. You freeze. Your first thought is collision. But your second thought, the stronger one, is no, it's Titanic. She's unsinkable. Everyone says that. The engineers, the captain, the newspapers, even the ship herself seems to believe it. Still, your instincts aren't wrong. You run. Down the corridor, through the twist of tight turns, past sleepy-eyed passengers poking their heads out of doors. You reach the stairwell to the crew quarters and slip down. You're not supposed to be here, but no one notices, because now others are running too. Shouts echo from below, then steam, then something louder, water. You don't see the flood yet, but you hear it, a rush like a broken dam, heavy, relentless. You dart behind a crate and peek. A hatch has been blown open. Crewmen are hauling tools and slamming doors shut. Their faces are pale. One of them is shaking. Another has a bleeding hand wrapped in a rag. A third is yelling into a metal phone on the wall. Then you see it, water, black and fast, pouring across the floor of the lower deck. Not bubbling in, not trickling, charging. You turn and run back the way you came. You don't go to your bunk. You don't warn the others. You just run, because something inside you, something deeper than thought, tells you this isn't going to stop. You finally burst into a hallway where passengers are gathering. People are asking questions now. One woman clutches her coat and asks if it was just an iceberg. Another says she felt nothing. A man jokes, she'll shake it off. Just like the crew said. They want to believe. You do too. But something inside you already knows. This ship has been wounded. They'll try to fix it, of course. The Titanic isn't a toy. She's divided into 16 watertight compartments. They can close them off. That's what they were designed for. Except the iceberg didn't break through just one. It ripped open 6. Even now, far below your feet, the compartments are filling. The water doesn't care about architecture, doesn't care about safety measures or wealthy passengers or newspaper headlines. It's here. It's inside. It's climbing. You finally find your way to the open air. The night is cruelly quiet. The stars are out, clear and sharp against the blackest sky you've ever seen. The sea is flat as glass. It feels wrong. Shouldn't there be waves, wind, clouds? Instead, the ship sits still, wounded but pretending to be fine. Officers march quietly along the upper decks, speaking in low voices. You spot lifeboats being uncovered, carefully, quietly, no shouting, no panic, just intent. You realize what they're doing, trying not to startle anyone. And it works, for now. The band begins to play. Not a march, not a hymn, just something soft, pleasant, forgettable. A musical lie. Something to smooth the fear from the edges of the moment. People gather, confused. Some are laughing. Some are worried. One man lights a cigarette and mutters, "So this is the grand finale." You're too far down the ladder to know anything for certain, but word filters through fast. You hear that officers are discussing evacuation, that lifeboats are being loaded, that passengers are being asked to dress warmly as a precaution. You don't even have a proper coat. You head back inside, not because you want to, because you have to find your people, your bunkmates, the mother with the baby, the old Irishman who said the ship was too fast. You pass a line of third-class passengers gathered by the gate. It's still closed. They're waiting. Some are calm. Some are asking questions. A few are beginning to raise their voices. You watch an officer speak to them. You can't hear the words, but the tone is stiff, official. They're not being let through yet. You think of the lifeboats above. How few there are, how small. There are 2,224 people on Titanic. There are lifeboats for just over 700. You do the math. It doesn't work. You look again at the people in the corridor. Families, children, elderly, some wearing coats, others just in shirt sleeves. They still think they're waiting for instructions. They don't realize the ship is already deciding who gets to live. You lean against the wall, trying to breathe, trying to calm your heart, which has begun to thump like it's counting down. And just then, a whisper from behind you. She's going down. You turn. It's one of the crewmen, the one with the bleeding hand. He doesn't shout it. He doesn't say it with drama. Just the truth, like he can't carry it anymore. She's going down, he says again. Can't hold her. Not with 6 compartments breached. He disappears down a hallway, stumbling toward the engine rooms. You stand there, frozen. The Titanic has been struck. She is bleeding, and the lifeboats are already filling, and you are still locked below. You run again, this time not out of fear, but out of something sharper, desperation. The kind that sinks into your gut when you realize no one's coming to save you. Not in time. Not if you wait politely behind a gate. You reach the metal barrier again. A crowd's formed. Maybe 50 people now, packed close, murmuring, calling to crewmen. Some pound on the bars. Others whisper prayers. The gate holds. No key. No promise, just orders. You want to scream. Instead, you move sideways into one of the side corridors toward the lesser-known stairs. You've explored these halls before, back when the voyage was new, and Titanic still felt like an adventure. You remember a service ladder behind the galley pantry, not for passengers, probably not even for most crew. You slip through a narrow doorway and duck low, heart banging. There, just as you remembered, a rusted spiral ladder that winds up through the bones of the ship. You start climbing. The metal is cold, slick. Your palms ache. The air gets warmer as you ascend, strangely, like the heat hasn't noticed the ship is dying yet. You pass pipes, vents, a nest of wires humming faintly. And then, finally, a hatch. You push it open and emerge like a ghost into a hallway lit with elegant sconces. The change is shocking. 1 second, You're in the guts of the ship the next. You're standing in second class, surrounded by people in nightgowns and dinner jackets. A woman shrieks softly when she sees you. You look like what you are, someone from below, covered in soot, sweating, wild-eyed. A steward steps toward you, probably to ask what you're doing here. You don't stop. You walk past them all, toward the staircase leading up. When you reach the deck, the air hits you like a slap. Freezing, dry, it sears your lungs. The night is no longer quiet. People are shouting now, not in panic yet, but close. Officers move quickly between clusters of passengers, trying to calm them, telling them everything is fine, that lifeboats are just being lowered as a precaution. But the lifeboats are already going. You see one, number 7, being lowered with barely 25 people inside. It can carry 65. You blink. Why so few? Later, you'll hear explanations. The crew was untrained. The davits were untested. Some thought the boats might buckle under full weight. Others simply didn't want to alarm the rich. Historians still argue whether it was incompetence or cruelty. But right now, all you know is this: the boats are going down half empty, and you're not on one. You try to approach, but a line has already formed, mostly first-class women and children, a few men in dinner coats. A sailor bars your way with a hand on your chest. Back, he says. Stand back. You try to explain. You don't have the words. You point to your pocket where your ticket is. Third class. He doesn't even look. No more room. You stand there for a moment, frozen, the night wind biting at your ears. Then you turn and fade back into the shadows of the upper deck. You need a plan. The forward part of the ship is starting to dip. Just slightly, but you can feel it in your knees. The deck tilts down toward the bow. Water laps closer along the port side. Another boat swings out and lowers. You hear someone arguing. A woman refuses to board without her husband. A child is crying. You slip away again. The second-class stairwells are swarming now. Some crew members are directing people. Others are confused themselves. You hear one say, "Boats can't take everyone. Just the women and children." Orders from the bridge. Another responds, "Not enough boats, not even close." You push through the crowd, heading for the rear. You've heard rumors about collapsible lifeboats, hidden ones. Maybe there's a chance. As you pass a window, you see it. Water sloshing over the bow. Titanic's nose is dipping below the Atlantic. People are still dancing in one of the lounges. A string quartet plays Alexander's ragtime band. They haven't been told, or they refuse to believe. You don't blame them. After all, what kind of world allows something this massive to die? You reach the poop deck. The air is filled with shouting now. No more politeness. Men push forward. Women scream. A lifeboat is lowered too fast. It drops with a crack and a jolt that makes your stomach churn. You try to step closer, but a sailor grabs you. "No more men," he yells. only women and children. You want to say you're not a man, not really. Not the kind they mean. You're not in a suit. You don't have a title. You don't have anything but a name and a freezing coat. But there's no time for arguments. So you back away, again. And this time, you head toward the stern. That's where the crowd is now. Dozens, then hundreds of passengers have fled aft, toward the higher part of the ship. Because as Titanic sinks, the bow goes first, and the stern rises. The deck beneath your feet tilts a few degrees more. You struggle to walk straight. People slip. One man falls, hits his head. No one stops. You reach the very rear of the ship. And for a moment, it's almost quiet. No boats here. No lights. Just a strange calm as the freezing wind whistles over the darkened railings. You look down and see the propellers. Enormous, still and shining in the starlight. Half exposed now as the waterline continues to drop lower and lower. Some people sit on benches. Others kneel. Some hold hands. You sit too. The water's too cold for panic. You remember a story a sailor told, how the ship was designed to break in half if the angles got too steep. You wonder what it will feel like when it does. You look around at the others. Some pray, some sing. One man mutters to himself, "She'll break her back. She'll snap like a twig." He's not wrong. You look up and you see the stars. So many stars. You never realized how clear the sky is when you're far from everything. No cities. No smoke. No sound except wind and distant music. A woman near you whispers, "This can't be real." And you say, just once, to no one in particular, "It is." The ship groans again, deeper this time. A long, drawn-out howl of metal under strain. It shakes the deck. Someone screams. The bow plunges further. Water tears through the lower levels, now kitchens, salons, stairwells. It rips chandeliers from ceilings. It flips pianos. The grand staircase is already underwater, and the stern begins to lift. Slowly, like a giant being raised by the hand of something bigger. People stumble, slide. One man clings to a railing and sobs. You grip the iron bars beside you, knuckles white. The deck rises more, until Titanic's great body forms a V against the sky. She creaks, splits. The break is not an explosion. It's a shattering metal screeching like a violin being torn in half. The lights flicker. Then they go out. Silence. Then the stern crashes back to the sea. Not gently, violently. People are thrown. Some vanish. Others scramble to their feet again. You brace yourself. Because now, the rest is going down. You close your eyes. You can feel the moment coming. The ocean is about to take her, and you're still aboard. You don't remember letting go. One moment, you're clinging to the railing, knees locked, lungs crushed by the cold. The next, you're airborne, lifted not by any force of will, but by gravity's final decision. And then, the plunge, free fall, Screams vanish as your ears fill with rushing air. Your mind detaches. Time stretches. Then, the sea. It hits you like a wall of knives. Not water, ice with teeth. You go under. Darkness closes around you. Your chest locks. Limbs spasm. The pain is instant, total. The shock of it blinds you. Cold, colder than you thought a human body could endure. It punches the breath from your lungs. You thrash, kick. Your coat drags you downward. You rip at it. Your boots feel like anchors. For a terrifying second, you wonder if this is it, if this is what drowning feels like. Not quiet, not slow, just confusion and cold and light leaking away. But then, you surface, air searing. Your breath comes in ragged, rattling gasps. Your throat feels crushed, your ears ring, your teeth chatter uncontrollably. You can't speak. You can barely think. But you're alive. Somehow, you cling to a broken plank, splinters stabbing your fingers. Around you, the sea boils with bodies and debris. People crying out, some for help, some for mothers, some not making sound at all. The sky above is velvet black, stars sharper than glass. But all you see is what's left of the Titanic. She's still there. Well, what's left of her? The bow is gone, swallowed. The stern lurches high again, almost vertical now. A shape too large to comprehend, a steel cathedral rising against the heavens. And then she begins to fall. The final descent. No music plays now. No lights shine. Just the groan of breaking metal, the splashes of falling people, and the massive exhale of a dying beast. She slides beneath the surface with a last shudder, as though dragged downward by something ancient and patient. Then nothing, no ship, just silence. Not quiet, the kind of silence that presses on your chest, like the world holding its breath. Not even the wind dares move. Historians still argue whether she sank in 2 pieces or 3, whether the bow went down intact or shattered on descent. But you were there, and all you know is, one moment she was a floating city, and the next gone. All that remains is you, and the ocean, and the cold. You've never imagined this kind of cold. Not even in the worst winters. It isn't just around you. It is you. In you, your fingers don't move. Your legs have stopped kicking. You drift. Somewhere you hear a voice. Faint British accent. A call in the darkness. Is anyone there? You blink. The water stings your eyes. Another voice. Farther away. This is the RMS Carpathia. Hold on. But it is. It's someone else. Someone in a lifeboat. You turn your head. It takes everything you have. You see it maybe 20 yards off. A small lifeboat crammed with people. Too many. They're arguing. Someone says they should row back. Another shouts, "We'll capsize. There are too many." You want to scream. You can't. Your mouth won't open. Your jaw is locked. Instead, you blink again. Float, your body barely above water, your head dipping, rising, dipping. A man floats near you, older. You recognize him from second class. He was always reading. His face is blue now, his eyes open, still as glass. You close yours and drift. This is the part they never told you about. Not the grand staircase or the first-class china. Not the electric lights or the unsinkable boast. They didn't talk about what it's like to be forgotten in the middle of the sea, to know there were lifeboats, but not enough, to hear them and not be welcome aboard. Historians often note how most passengers died not by drowning, but by exposure. Within 15 minutes, the North Atlantic robs you of motion. Another 5, and it robs you of warmth. Another 5, and you go silent. But there were outliers, people like you, who didn't go silent, not yet. Something keeps your eyes open. Maybe it's luck, maybe something crueler. You hear another boat pass, this one closer. Someone yells. There's one there over there. A light appears, a tiny flicker. It moves toward you. You want to reach out. Your arm rises an inch. Then everything stops. Not dramatically, not with a jolt. Just stops. You sink again, just a little. Not enough to go under. Just enough to feel like you're letting go. But the flicker grows brighter. Voices louder. And then arms, hands grab you, pull. A voice shouts. He's still breathing. You don't know if it's true. You're not sure you're even in your body anymore. But you're lifted, hauled over the side. The sudden shift from water to boat is unbearable. Every nerve wakes up screaming. You vomit seawater. Someone wraps a blanket around you, but it doesn't help. You shake so hard your teeth chatter like bones in a tin. You hear another man whisper, "Too cold. He won't last long." But you do. Barely. You lie in the bottom of the lifeboat, blinking up at stars, feeling the ache of something returning pain, maybe. Or memory. Others in the boat are sobbing. A woman rocks a child who isn't moving. An old man mutters prayers over and over like a lullaby for the dead. No one speaks of what they've seen. Not yet. The night drags on. The sea calms, which somehow makes it worse, like the ocean has eaten its fill. Far off on the horizon, a light appears, faint but steady. You stare. Someone whispers, "Carpathia." You don't believe it. Not until the sun begins to rise. The first light of dawn spills across the waves, and you see her. A black hull, a ship, alive. The lifeboats row. Slow, numb, but they row. When the Carpathia finally takes you aboard, you're lifted like luggage. Hands warm and real. A blanket, a voice saying, "You're safe now." You almost laugh, because nothing about this is safe. But you don't argue. You're one of the 705, out of 2,224. Historians still debate how many more could have been saved if the boats had gone back sooner, if there'd been more drills, if the class barriers hadn't turned steel into tombs. But none of that matters right now, because you're alive. Barely. And when someone asks your name, you forget it for a moment. Not because of memory, but because part of you is still out there. Somewhere, floating, waiting. You wake up to voices. Low, hushed, careful, like someone's afraid to wake a ghost. And maybe they are, because when you finally open your eyes, you're not sure you didn't die. The ceiling above you sways. It's painted steel. Too low to be a ballroom, too clean to be a lifeboat. You realize you're aboard the Carpathia. A blanket wraps your body like armor. Dry clothes stick to your skin like memory. Your body aches. Your hands are swollen. Your face burns in patches. But you're warm. The air smells of coffee, coal, and human fear. People murmur all around. You glance to your left, someone sleeping. To your right, someone crying softly, their back turned, head bowed over shaking hands. Everywhere, exhaustion. The air is heavy with a silence you recognize now. Not peace, not quiet, just too much left unsaid. You sit up. The world spins. Your stomach churns. A sailor notices. He walks over with a mug of broth. You try to thank him, but your throat barely works. He nods, says nothing, places a hand on your shoulder, then moves on. You drink. It tastes like survival. Salt and metal and warmth. You nearly cry. The next hours blur. Names are taken. Some are real. Some aren't. A woman writes Mrs. Brown on a passenger list. Later they'll call her the unsinkable Molly Brown. But for now, she's just a stranger handing out wool socks and biting sarcasm. You're assigned a bunk, though no one sleeps much. People stare straight ahead. Some whisper what they saw. The band playing. The ship cracking in two. The man who shot himself on the deck. Whether it was an officer or a desperate father changes depending on who tells it. Historians still argue about that shot, whether it happened at all, or if it's just trauma trying to fill in the noise. A girl beside you mutters, "We didn't even hit another ship." She's 10. She still doesn't understand how ice can sink iron. Later, you're brought topside. The sea stretches flat and innocent now, like it didn't just devour a monument, like it didn't just erase thousands. Some people stand at the railing, watching the waves like they expect to see the Titanic resurface, keel first, majestic and defiant. But there's nothing, just cold wind, gray sky, and sorrow. A priest begins to read something. The 23rd Psalm, maybe, or a sailor's prayer. You stop listening. You're watching a man take off his coat. He stares at it like it's someone else. Then he throws it into the ocean. A woman nearby clutches a necklace and whispers, "I told him to leave the safe. I told him." No one responds. Another lifeboat is pulled up. Inside, bodies. Some frozen. Some wrapped in tarps. They're laid on the deck in rows, quiet and neat. You look away. The Carpathia turns east. To New York. It's only been a few hours since you left the Titanic, since you floated in the black water, unsure if you were still alive. But it might as well be years. You're different now. Everyone is. A crewman hands out telegram slips. If you know someone's name, you can send word ahead. Most people can't remember numbers. Some don't remember who to call. You just sit. The ship's engine hums beneath you like a lullaby made of steel. And you think, not about the sinking, not yet. You think about the people left behind. Some of them were with you in the lifeboat. Some were in the water. Some were just silhouettes on the deck, in the corridors, behind closed doors. You remember a couple holding hands on the stern, their eyes shut tight. You remember a baker throwing deck chairs into the sea for makeshift flotation. He made it somehow. Swam till he couldn't feel his arms. You'll hear stories about him later. For now, he's just another figure fading into the fog of memory. That night, you don't sleep. You sit in the hallway, knees pulled to your chest, listening to the murmur of survivors. One woman swears the iceberg wasn't white, but blue. Another says she saw crew members locking steerage doors. Another insists she heard gunshots long after the ship cracked in two. Historians still debate those doors. Some argue they were policy, quarantine, crowd control. Others say it was simple class cruelty. Either way, third-class casualties were almost double those of first. But that's not the kind of math you want to do tonight. Instead, you watch a man in an officer's coat wash his hands again and again, scrubbing invisible blood from his palms, and you realize no one knows what to do with this. Not the crew, not the survivors, not the world that waits across the sea. The Titanic wasn't supposed to sink, not by design, not by arrogance, not by ice. It was a ship built to conquer nature. But nature doesn't care about blueprints. You start to write a letter. You get as far as "Dear Mother" and stop. What do you even say? Hey, survived the most famous shipwreck in history. Sorry about your favorite shoes. No, there are no words for this. So you tear the page and start again. You write, "I'm alive," and that's enough for now. You fold the paper, tuck it into your coat, and try to believe it. When the Carpathia reaches port, the crowd will be massive. Reporters, photographers, family members screaming names. Some will cheer, others will weep, and some will simply turn away when they don't see the face they came for. But that's not tonight. Tonight, you're just here, breathing, listening to the hum of the engine, watching your breath in the cold air. A nurse comes by, offers you tea. You take it. It's bitter and hot. You sip slowly, then lean your head against the wall, and finally sleep. Not peace, but sleep. Morning, you feel it before you see it. Not the light, though that filters in eventually, soft and pale. It's the change in sound, a shift in the hush of the ship. People moving, talking more openly, no longer whispering as if ghosts were listening. You sit up, sore in every joint. Your neck cracks. Your ribs ache like they were caught in a vice. But you're here, alive. That word again. Alive. It doesn't feel like it yet. You're still floating in the after. But the Carpathia keeps moving. And the closer you get to land, the more the real world begins to bleed back in. Someone hands you a slice of bread. You thank them this time. Your voice is croaky but audible. That feels like a victory. Others around you do the same, testing their voices, reclaiming their presence. A few even laugh, though the sound is too loud, too brittle, like porcelain about to shatter. You get dressed slowly, not in your own clothes. Those were lost. These come from a crew locker a size too big, sleeves rolled, collar frayed. But they're dry, warm, yours for now. Then a buzz. People gather at the port side of the deck. You follow, not out of curiosity, but because that's what the living do. They move forward. There it is, the Statue of Liberty. Distant, gray-green against the sky. She doesn't look triumphant today. She looks solemn, like she already knows what's coming. And past her, New York, skyline hazy. Docks already swarming with journalists, officials, families, police. You spot telegraph, wires strung like spider webs, wagons lined up, and hundreds, maybe thousands of people pressed to the barriers, waiting for names, waiting for answers, waiting for a face to appear through the crowd and say, I made it. Your gut twists, because you know, for every reunion, there will be 10 empty arms. The Carpathia docks just after nightfall. Rain begins to fall soft, steady, unbothered by your arrival. A crewman speaks gently. You'll be disembarking by group. Please stay calm. You clutch the rail, watching. One by one, survivors step off the ship. Some run. Others collapse into sobs. Others just walk away, silent, like sleepwalkers. You descend slowly. Wooden steps creak under your feet. Flashbulbs pop like tiny explosions. Journalists shout questions. Were you in first class? Did you see the iceberg? Is it true the band played to the end? You keep your head down. They don't want you, not really. Not unless you're rich, or bleeding, or scandalous. You're just another wet name on a growing list. At the end of the pier, volunteers offer blankets, coffee, help. You accept another blanket, nod your thanks. Then someone grabs your arm. You flinch hard, a reflex born in the dark. But it's a man in uniform. Navy, kind eyes. Name, he asks. You tell him. He writes it down. Then anyone here for you? You hesitate. Don't know. He nods, says, that's okay. You'll go to the Seamen's Church Institute. Hot meal, bed. You'll be looked after. Another nod. You don't argue. You're past arguing. A bus, really just a covered wagon with benches, waits nearby. You board it, shivering again despite the blanket. As you ride through the city, lights blur past, so many lights. You hadn't realized how dark the Atlantic was until now. Here, Every street corner glows, every window flickers, and yet the city feels quiet, like it knows. The Institute is a cathedral of calm. Volunteers usher you in. You're led to a cot, handed a bar of soap, given 5 minutes in a bath, so hot it makes your skin sing. You eat something, bread and stew. Someone speaks to you, but you don't hear the words. Just the tone, kind, reassuring, unbelievably normal. You're given a notepad. You can write anyone, the nurse says. We'll post it for free. You write again. I'm safe. The ship sank. I don't know what happens next. You stop there. You don't sign it, because you're not sure who it's for yet. That night, you lie in bed. It doesn't rock. It doesn't creak. It doesn't hum beneath you. And you can't sleep. Images play in your mind. The grand staircase flooding like a well. The sound of a violin fatting beneath screams. A woman passing her baby into a stranger's lifeboat. The ship lifting like a lever, then breaking in half like a breadstick. And that final quiet, you hear it still, that deep ocean hush that followed the last splash. Historians often note that the strangest thing survivors reported wasn't the sound of the ship breaking up, but the silence after. Because when over 1,000 people disappear into the sea, you expect noise. Instead, there was only absence. You lie there, eyes open, breathing slowly, trying not to remember, trying not to forget. You know the questions will come tomorrow. Interviews, newspapers, probably some twisted souvenir hunter asking for a piece of your coat. They'll want details, dates, decks, numbers, but you were there, and you know the truth isn't neat. There were no clear lines between brave and coward, rich and poor, right and wrong. Only cold water and a desperate need to live. Historians still argue whether Captain Smith went down with the ship or jumped into the sea. Whether the ship's wireless operators could have done more. Whether the White Star Line cut corners for profit. But you don't argue, because history is made of people trying to survive the moment, and people later trying to make sense of it. And right now, all you know is you're here, somehow, still floating through the aftermath, still blinking in the light, still figuring out what kind of world you've just been born into. The days that follow are strange. You move like a ghost. People ask your name, and you answer automatically, like someone else is speaking for you. Your feet touch the floor, your mouth chews food, but your mind's still drifting somewhere out there on the North Atlantic, frozen in time. At the Seamen's Church Institute, you're just one of many. Dozens of Titanic survivors have been funneled through its halls, some wearing borrowed coats, some with bandaged hands, some clutching nothing but the memories that refuse to go silent. The volunteers are kind. They feed you. They listen. They tell you it's okay to cry. But still, there's a weight they can't lift. Something invisible pressing down on your chest. Grief comes in pieces. A woman in the next bunk wakes up screaming one night. shouting a name over and over, Jacob, Jacob, until her voice breaks. No one stops her. No one dares. She goes quiet after a while, stares at the ceiling like it might collapse on her. You both know Jacob isn't coming back, and neither are the others. A girl, maybe 16, writes down every name she remembers seeing on board. She reads them aloud like a prayer or a penance. No one asks her to stop. You find yourself listening for names you know. There are none. You go out walking one morning. New York is noisy, indifferent, alive in a way that almost offends you. Streetcars rattle past. People shout about apples. A paperboy hollers, Titanic death list updated, while waving the day's headlines like a flag. You see your ship on the front page, or what's left of it, a black and white sketch, nose deep in the sea. There are mistakes in the story, made-up quotes, conflicting timelines. Historians still argue whether some of these early reports were sensational on purpose, or just the chaos of trying to cover catastrophe in real time. You duck into an alley, vomit. Too many words, not enough truth. By noon, your legs are tired, so you sit on a bench. A man joins you. He looks like someone who used to matter: starched collar, trimmed mustache, polished shoes. But his hands shake, and his voice is quiet when he speaks. Second class, D-deck. I was in the library when it happened. You say nothing. He keeps going anyway. They told us it was fine, just a precaution. Some of us even laughed. A pause. I didn't laugh, I packed. That's why I made it. He shakes his head, then adds softly, I've never hated myself more. You finally speak, just one line. We weren't meant to be heroes. He doesn't answer, just stares at the street. That night, you write another letter. This time it's to someone specific. You don't know if they're alive or even reachable. But the words come. You tell them what happened, not just the facts, but the moments. The smell of paint in the corridors. The way the ship's hull groaned like a dying beast. How the stars looked impossibly bright that night, reflected on water you could no longer trust. You write about the lifeboat, the silence, the bitter taste of survival. You cry while writing. That's new. Until now, everything had been locked inside, like a compartment below deck. Now it leaks. You let it. You sign the letter, then pause. For the first time since the sinking, you write something else beneath your name. Titanic survivor. It feels strange, like you're claiming a title you didn't want, but earned anyway. And still, part of you wonders if it's even true. If surviving a thing like that means anything at all. The next morning, a nurse tells you the line has sent someone from the White Star offices. They want to interview you. Ask a few questions. Offer compensation. The word makes your stomach twist. You sit in a dim room with a man in a clean suit. He asks when you boarded, what you saw, whether any officers gave direct orders, what class you were in, what you saw after the impact. He doesn't ask how you feel. You answer his questions. He writes things down, nods, frowns. At one point, he says, "You're lucky." You want to scream, but you don't. You just nod. Later, someone hands you a small envelope. Inside, £5 sterling, a voucher for train fare, and a signed letter from the company offering regret and condolences. You fold the letter, tear it once, then again, until it's just paper dust in your lap. You don't take the money. Instead, you walk. You find yourself back at the waterfront, watching ships come and go. Smaller than the Titanic, less grand, but still breathing. You wonder if you'll ever step on another ship. The answer doesn't come. Some survivors never do. Some return to the sea out of need or defiance. Historians still argue about the psychological aftermath. Back then, they called it melancholia. Today, we call it trauma. Either way, the damage didn't end when the Carpathia docked. You exhale. The wind is colder than it should be. You wrap your coat tighter. And in that moment, something shifts. Not healing, not closure. Just space. A little room in your chest where grief can live without taking everything. You survived. You can't explain why. And you can't make sense of who didn't. But you did. And now, somehow, you have to figure out what to do with that. They say time heals, but no one tells you what to do with the days in between. You wake each morning before the sun, not because you want to, but because that's when the cold water memories rise again, brushing against your dreams like ghost fingers. You don't scream. You just open your eyes, stare at the ceiling, and wait for your breathing to return to something human. At the Institute, the number of survivors slowly dwindles. Some are claimed by family, some by friends. A few simply vanish off into the streets of New York like the past never happened. You're still here, not stuck, just floating. Some nights, you join the others in the small reading room. It smells like dust and peppermint oil. People don't talk much, but sometimes someone plays the piano in the corner. A soft tune, nothing grand, just enough to fill the silence without challenging it. One night, it's Nearer, My God, to Thee, the song the band played, or so they say. Historians still argue whether that was really the final tune. Some survivors swore it was ragtime. Others remember silence. Others remember nothing at all. But when you hear it now, something breaks loose inside. Not a sob, not quite. More like a breath you've been holding since April 15th, finally leaving your body. You don't clap. No one does. There are moments when the world feels normal again. You eat. You shave. You laugh once at a joke someone tells about soggy socks. And for a second, you forget. Then, just as quickly, you remember. That's the thing about surviving something enormous. It doesn't end. It just gets quieter. You visit a small church nearby. Not because you're suddenly devout, but because the stained glass windows remind you of the Titanic's first-class dining room. light caught in color. The pastor doesn't ask questions. He simply nods as you sit in the back pew, hands folded. You don't pray. You just listen to the creak of the benches, to the occasional cough, to the world continuing. And then one day, your name is called. There's a letter from someone back home. The envelope is smudged, the ink faded. You open it with shaking hands. They thought you were dead. They'd seen your name missing from the first lists, mourned you, lit a candle, told neighbors you were gone. And now you've returned. The words tremble off the page. Half disbelief, half relief. They ask where you are, when you'll come back. They don't ask what happened. They know better. You stare at the letter a long time. Then you begin to pack. The nurse gives you a small satchel, just enough for a few things. Your borrowed coat, a book someone gave you, the list of names you wrote that first night on the Carpathia, now folded and soft with wear. You take the train. It's jarring, the speed of it, the whistle, the motion. You press your hand to the window, watching the world blur past. Every now and then, someone on board mentions the Titanic. Loud voices, hushed rumors. She sank in under 3 hours, they say. Only 700 lived. I heard a millionaire bribed his way off. You say nothing. Let them gossip. Let them theorize. You know the truth is stranger, because it wasn't just about the iceberg. It was about decisions, assumptions, arrogance, class, time. Historians still argue whether the ship could have been saved with better warnings, or more lifeboats, or fewer egos. You don't argue. You just press your forehead to the glass and listen to the tracks hum beneath you. When you arrive, it's early evening. Someone meets you at the station. They stare at you for a long moment, like they're seeing a ghost. Maybe you are one, but then they embrace you. And for the first time since the sinking, your body remembers it's warm-blooded. It remembers it's loved. It remembers it's real. You stay quiet during the welcome meal. The table is full, but you keep seeing empty chairs. You say thank you. You say yes, you're tired. Yes, you're lucky. No, you don't want to talk about it. They understand. Later in bed, you touch the wooden frame and realize how solid it feels. How still. You fall asleep to the sound of crickets, not waves. And for the first time in weeks, your dreams are silent. The next morning, you open a newspaper. The Titanic is still on the front page. Interviews, scandals, letters to the editor. One column asks, could it happen again? You already know the answer. Yes, because steel breaks, systems fail, people get comfortable. But you also know something else. People survive. Not all, but some. You did. You did. It's not a triumph, but it's something. And slowly, quietly, you begin to imagine a life beyond that night. One where your story doesn't end in cold water, but begins in it. You keep to yourself. There's a strange pressure in being one of the few who made it out. People want stories. They want meaning, as if your survival comes with a message, as if it's your job to make it all make sense for them. You nod politely when they ask. You smile when they offer sympathy, or say how God must have spared you for a reason. You don't argue, but every word feels like a weight. The truth is, you don't have a message, just memories, the thud of lifeboats hitting the water, the whisper of silk dresses soaked in seawater, the sudden quiet when the music stopped. You walk the coastline in the mornings now, just far enough to hear the waves crash. You don't go near the water, not yet, but you watch it like it's a former friend you no longer trust. One day, while walking, you see a child playing near the shore. A little girl, maybe 5 years old. She's building something in the sand, an elaborate structure with walls, rooms, and tiny windows. She turns to you and beams. "It's a ship," she says, "but mine won't sink." You manage a laugh. It surprises even you. She asks if you want to help. You kneel beside her and press your finger into the sand, carving a small line for the railing. The ocean rolls in and steals part of the deck away. She frowns. You shrug. "Even good ships need rebuilding," you say. She nods like she understands and goes right back to building. That night, you sit at your writing desk and try again. You've written versions of the story before, fragments, pieces, outlines. None of them ever felt finished. But this time, you begin with something different. You begin with silence, with the space between heartbeats, when you realized you might live. You write not for others, but for yourself. No flourish, no metaphor, just the raw, uncomfortable truth that you survived and that it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like a wound, one that heals slowly, one that never truly disappears, but one you can live around. You start to receive more letters, some from other survivors, others from people who lost someone. Most don't ask questions. They just want connection, a kind of shared gravity. One man writes, "My brother was a fireman in the engine room. He never came back. I keep trying to picture what he saw in his last hour. I think he stayed. I think he helped others. He always did." You write back, "He did, they all did. You should be proud. Even if you didn't know him. Even if you can't be sure. Sometimes, comfort is more important than accuracy." Historians still argue whether some crew were locked below decks by accident or by order. Some say it was to prevent chaos. Others say it was criminal. You choose not to think about that too much. You remember faces, not orders. Hands passing children upward. Men holding back tears. One steward who gave you his own gloves and told you to get moving. You think he knew he wasn't coming. You've begun attending small survivor gatherings. Quiet things held in halls or parlors. At first, you didn't know why you went. You just did. And then one night, someone pulls out a violin. Not for a concert, just a single tune, hesitant, gentle. The same hymn. nearer, my God, to thee. This time no one cries. You just sit with it. Let it move through you like a slow tide. You speak afterward, not loudly, but clearly. I still wake up thinking I'm in the water. Someone nods. A woman across from you replies, "Me too." Another adds, "I don't sleep on my back anymore." Feels too much like floating. A soft chuckle, not because it's funny, but because it's true. There's no therapy back then. No trauma support. Just community. Just being with people who get it. It's not perfect, but it's something. You begin to help others write their stories, too. Older passengers who can't quite find the words. People who need someone to organize the memories for them. You become the quiet recorder of impossible nights. There's honor in that. You don't say you're healed. You just say you're writing again, walking again, laughing sometimes, even sleeping better. You still avoid deep water, but you no longer flinch when it rains. One day, a journalist asks to interview you. He's polite, young, eager. He says he wants to preserve the legacy. You agree on one condition: no dramatizing, no grand metaphors, no iceberg as destiny stuff. He smiles. Just truth then. You nod. Truth's plenty dramatic, you say. Because it is. And you've lived it. The year is moving on now. Spring melts into summer. The newspapers stop printing Titanic stories every day. New tragedies, new politics, new distractions take their place. Time, it seems, has moved on whether you're ready or not. You're not, but you pretend, because pretending is easier than explaining. It's easier to say, "I'm doing well," than to say, "I can't close my eyes without hearing metal scream." You take small jobs around town, helping at the local grocer, fixing hinges, writing letters for folks who never learned to spell proper. It's all simple work, but it grounds you. People still whisper sometimes. "That's the Titanic one," they say, just quiet enough that you still hear it. They think they're being kind. Maybe they are, but it feels like being frozen in time. Like the iceberg didn't just strike the ship. It carved itself into your name, too. You meet someone, a woman. She works at the bakery, laughs with her whole face, calls you hero once as a joke, and then quickly apologizes. You don't correct her. You just shake your head and say, "Hardly." She asks you questions differently than the others. Not what happened, but how are you now? Not did you see the ship break, but do you dream of it still? You nod. She doesn't flinch. You walk together most evenings, past the harbor where ships still come and go. You don't look at them directly, but you let the sea breeze touch your skin. "Does it scare you?" she asks one evening. "The water?" "Yes," you say, "but less than it used to." She smiles. "That's something." It is. Historians still argue whether it was the Californians' fault. The ship nearby, the one that saw rockets but didn't come. Some say the crew were asleep. Others blame confusion or pride. There are inquiries. hearings, testimonies. You don't join them. You don't care who's to blame. Not anymore. What matters is who survived and how they carry it. You've started sketching again. Not full paintings, just small charcoal pieces. The outline of a deck chair, a lifeboat in the distance, the smooth, brutal curve of an iceberg drawn from memory, not photographs. It helps. Some nights, you share tea with your friend from the bakery. She tells you about her childhood in the countryside, how she once fell into a river chasing a duck. You tell her about a steward who slipped on the grand staircase and laughed even as the ship tilted. You don't tell her everything, but more than you've told anyone else. She asks if you'll ever go back. To see, you shake your head. Not unless I absolutely have to. But she's not talking about ships. She means the wreck, the memory, the night itself. You think a long time before answering. I go back every night, you finally say. But I don't stay as long anymore. That's true. You still have bad nights, but they're not every night. The screams don't come as loud. The water isn't as deep. You still wake sweating, but not always afraid. There's progress in that. One afternoon, you attend a memorial, a large stone monument in a city square. Names carved in clean lines, some with full titles, some only unknown man or boy, age 9. You run your fingers over the letters. It doesn't bring peace, but it brings something like permission to grieve, to move forward, to live. A boy stands beside you. He looks up and asks, "Were you there?" You nod. He doesn't ask what it was like. He just says, "My uncle was on it. I never met him." You put a hand on the stone. He probably helped someone. You don't know that for sure, but it's what the boy needs to hear. Maybe it's what you need too. That night, you walk home under the stars, and for the first time in a long time, they don't look like warning lights. They look like stars again, far still, unmoving. The sky above doesn't tilt. The ground beneath you stays solid. You're here, alive, changed, but here, and that's no small thing. You're invited to speak. Just once, at a school, the headmaster says it's part of a history unit. Something about first-hand voices and preserving the living memory. You almost say no, but then you remember the boy at the memorial, the one who never knew his uncle, the one who asked nothing and understood everything. You say yes. The classroom is small, warm with chalk dust and curiosity. Kids around 12, 13, just old enough to be fascinated by things they don't fully understand. The teacher introduces you with solemnity. You clear your throat, nod, and begin. You don't start with the iceberg. You start with the quiet, with the feeling of standing at the rail at night, seeing nothing but ocean and sky, and believing, truly believing, that nothing could go wrong. You tell them about the food, about the ornate chandeliers and fresh rolls in 3rd class, about the little boy with the accordion who played for coins in the hall, about the older woman who packed 6 hats and wore none. You make them laugh. You tell them about how ridiculous it was, in hindsight, to believe in unsinkable. How everyone, passengers and crew alike, clung to that word like it was a charm. Historians still argue whether that word even came from White Star Line marketing, or was a creation of the press after the disaster. Either way, it stuck, like a curse disguised as confidence. You talk about the night, not the sinking, not yet, but the moment it changed. The jolt, not even that dramatic, just a shudder, like the world clearing its throat. People looked up, looked around, and then went back to their drinks, their cards, their dancing. Because who would worry? You let silence linger. Then you talk about the lifeboats, how few there were, how slow the loading, how hard the choices. You say, there was a man who begged to stay behind so his wife could go. She refused unless he came, too. The officer let them both board. That man held her hand the entire time and never once looked back. You don't name names. You let the image float. The room is very still. A girl in the front asks softly, "Were you scared?" You nod, yes. A boy asks, "Did you think you were going to die?" You pause. Not at first. That was the worst part. I didn't believe it until the lights went out. You talk about the Carpathia next. How cold everyone was. How quiet. How the smell of oil and sea salt clung to your skin for days after. You don't tell them about the screaming, or the faces, or the moment when you realized you were alone on your lifeboat, except for a man who had stopped breathing somewhere around 3:00 a.m. Some things you keep. The teacher thanks you. The students clap. It's awkward, scattered. You don't mind. You walk home in the quiet, thinking about how strange it is to be living history. How odd it is that something so loud, so terrifying, could become a paragraph in a textbook, and how many paragraphs lie, or soften, or forget. You resolve silently to write it all down. Every detail. Not for the newspapers, not for the speeches, but for someone in the future who needs to know what it felt like. Not just what happened, but how it felt. Your friend from the bakery brings you supper. She's read the paper, seen your picture in the school article. You looked very serious, she teases. You smile. I was thinking about lifeboats. She brings you tea. You talk about other things, about how fast flowers bloom this year, about the neighbor's cat who insists on sitting on your windowsill even when you shoo him. Later, as you're washing the dishes, she asks, "Do you ever think about going back? Not to the sea, but there, to where it happened?" You dry your hands. "I do. And would you?" "Maybe." She doesn't press. That night, you sit at your desk and open a blank page. This time, you write the title first. Night on the Water, a survivor's memory. It's not for sale, not for show. It's just for you, and maybe someday for someone who needs it, someone who thinks they're the only one who feels broken by survival. You write until your hand cramps. The candle burns low, and when you finally climb into bed, you don't dream of the sinking. You dream of the sky above it, black still, full of stars, watching silently as the world changed forever. You wake to the sound of seagulls, not screaming, not sirens, not waves clawing at wood, but birds. Just birds. You lie still for a moment, letting their shrill, careless voices pull you gently into morning. And for once, it doesn't feel wrong to be alive. You stretch, brew tea, and sit by the window with your notebook. The pages are filling fast now. Your story told slowly, steadily, one long breath at a time. Sometimes you forget you're writing it for anyone but yourself. Sometimes that's the only way it flows. Across the street, a newspaper boy shouts the headlines. War somewhere far. A scandal in Parliament. A local bakery catching fire, no injuries. You remember a time when your name was the headline. When crowds waited outside hearings and reporters scribbled your words like scripture. You hated it then. You hate it less now, not because it mattered, but because someone might have needed it. Someone like that boy at the memorial, or the girl in the schoolhouse who asked if you were scared. Maybe your words helped them carry something. Maybe they still do. You decide, without fanfare, that the next chapter will be your last. Not because there's nothing more to say, but because it's time to let the water settle. You walk down to the harbor later. You do this more now. It doesn't hurt as much. The water doesn't seem so cruel. The harbor smells of fish and salt and wood, same as it always has. A freighter loads crates. A child drops a toy into the shallows and wails until his father retrieves it with a pole. Life, stubborn and simple, moves forward. You think of the others, those who didn't make it. You never stop thinking of them. Not in the way people think grief works, like a wound that closes. No, this is more like a scar that shifts with the seasons. Some days it aches, some days it fades, but it's always there. You light a candle for them tonight. All of them. The baker in 3rd class who offered his last loaf to a mother with twins. The steward who strapped your life belt tighter before helping someone else. The wireless operator who kept tapping messages even as the water reached his knees. Historians still argue whether he could have saved more if they'd gotten the coordinates right the first time. Some blame panic. Others, poor instruments. But the fact remains he stayed. They all stayed. You write their names in your notebook, in the margins. Some you remember fully. Some just a face, or a tone of voice, or a pair of shoes. But you write them anyway, because memory is all that's left, and because they deserve more than silence. Later, your friend visits again. She brings bread, still warm from her own oven. She sets it on your table like it's a sacred offering. You've been quiet, she says. I've been remembering, you reply. She pours tea, sits with you. No questions this time, only presence. Sometimes that's enough. You read her a passage from your latest chapter, one where the ship is tilting, and people still don't understand what's happening. You describe the sound of teacups sliding across a table, the lurch of chandeliers, the eerie calm before screams begin. She listens, her eyes glassy. When you finish, she takes a breath and says, "It's beautiful, terrifying, but beautiful." You smile just a little. Maybe that's all survival is, terrifying, but beautiful. You close the notebook and put it away. Not hidden, not locked, just shelved. Finished. That night, the sky is clear. The stars are scattered across the heavens like glitter on black velvet. The same stars you saw that night, the ones that bore silent witness. You stand at your window, looking up, and say softly, "I'm still here." A statement, not a boast, not a question, just the truth. You survived, and you've made something of it, even if that something is quiet, even if that something is this. There is one final thing you must do. It's been stirring in your chest for weeks now, like a tide pulling inward, gentle but insistent. You can't ignore it anymore. It's time to go back, not to the wreckage, not physically, but close enough. So you buy a train ticket. It takes you days to get there, through winding countryside, towns where the names mean nothing to you. You watch the world blur past through fogged windows, the way you once watched waves lap against the hull. At last, you reach the coast. The sea is wide, gray, unknowable. You walk until your legs ache, until the soles of your shoes feel thin. Then you stop at a spot overlooking the Atlantic. It's not the exact place, of course. The Titanic lies miles off, deep and unreachable, like a forgotten cathedral swallowed by time. But this is close enough. You sit, you breathe, and you let yourself remember. You remember the tilt of the deck beneath your feet, the lantern swinging from a nail in the lifeboat, casting long shadows across faces that never stopped searching the darkness. You remember a girl crying for her dog, a man offering his coat to no one in particular, a baby silent in its mother's arms, the way the stars shimmered like glass, frozen above it all. You remember a hand reaching out to yours, not to pull you under, but to say goodbye. You remember thinking, this can't be how it ends. It was, but for many, it was. You pull the letter from your coat pocket. It's not to anyone in particular. Just a page torn from your notebook, folded neatly, sealed in wax. It reads, "To the ones who stayed, I did not forget. I lived because of you. I carry it still. Rest easy. You weigh it down with a flat stone and leave it on the edge of the bluff. The wind almost takes it, but doesn't. It settles secure, a whisper of closure. Behind you, gulls cry. Waves break against the rocks. The air tastes of salt and memory. You walk back slowly. You don't rush. You don't run. Each step is deliberate, grounded, present. On the train home, a child points to the water from the window and says, "Look, Mama, look at the ship." You turn. It's a freighter, nothing remarkable. But the child is smiling, nose pressed to the glass, full of wonder. You smile too. Back in town, life continues. You help fix a fence, lend someone sugar, write another letter, this one to the school teacher, offering to come speak again if they want. You meet your friend by the harbor one evening. She brings wine this time. You both drink in silence, watching the tide roll in. She asks you what it felt like, writing it all down. You think for a long time, then say, like dragging a net through the dark, you never know what you'll pull up. But eventually, you surface. She nods. Think you'll ever be done. You don't answer right away, because the truth is maybe not. Some stories don't end. They echo, they ripple. But now, at least, you've spoken yours. Let it breathe. Let it live outside your bones. She squeezes your hand gently. You watch the horizon fade into dusk. And for the first time in years, you don't flinch when a ship's horn calls in the distance. You just listen. You just are. And the sea, like you, is calm. Now you're drifting. Not at sea, not in fear, but in something softer. The weight you've carried for so long no longer feels like an anchor. More like a blanket, heavy, yes, but warm. Familiar. You lie back, close your eyes, let the rhythm of your breathing match the hush of invisible waves. Each inhale is a memory, each exhale release. The Titanic is gone, but you are not. You are here, and here is enough. You see the stars again, don't you? You remember how they looked from the lifeboat, too bright, too still. But now, they don't accuse. They comfort. They're the same stars. But you're not the same person. That's survival. It doesn't mean forgetting. It means including. Making space at the table for grief and joy to sit side by side. The water below is quiet. You float on it, effortless now. The noise of the past fades, softens. No more screaming, only the gentle creak of wood, the flutter of your heartbeat, the lull of sleep reaching up to meet you. You made it. You told the story. You let the ghosts be heard. And now they rest. So can you. Sleep comes like a tide, slow, inevitable, kind. Let it take you. Let it hold you. You're safe. You're still here. And you are not alone. Good night.